Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So social media, along with email, Substack, will be provided for you. I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the podcast platforms that I'm on. And I'm looking to grow to wherever you enjoy your podcast platforms, I'm on that. So, I'm on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Pandora, just to name a few. And I really appreciate all the listeners out there. Ratings on these platforms that I just gave you, for example, would be greatly important. And feedback, questions, comments, concerns is greatly welcomed and appreciated. So the best way to do that is to reach me is through my email. All right, so this episode is about the tradition and the origin of weddings in June. Why is that? And how it originated, and all of the myths behind it, in the aspects and aspirations about having a wedding in June. And also along with my penny for thoughts, per se, more along the lines of couple thoughts about this. All right, here we go. Let's dive in. June, blessing bride, and everything in between. So my thoughts. So I think it's quite interesting when everything is merged into the aspects of weddings and the aspects of marriage in general. And then when you dig deep and down into the realms of all of these different traditions, I think it also ties into the notions, into the reality of at the particular times in history, and then moving forward into the modern society of today, of how marriage is viewed. You know, many people have different interpretations about marriage, but in general, and my point of view about it is that is an ever-present example of the benefits and the lasting emotional health and physical health that you receive when you get to the point of your life when you realize that beyond that there's more to life than beyond yourself, and you connect with someone that you want to commit your entire life with and your entire life to, and share life together and get married and understand the true blessings and the true fortunes that come with marriage. It's unfortunate that people, this is not always the case, but majority, mainly here, I'm looking at the reality of the situation, that is one of those things of liking the idea and the substance and the aspects of marriage, but when it comes down to the hard work, kind of delving back and not really wanting to be a part of that. So what am I saying by this? The aspects of having a beautiful wedding, being in front of friends and family, and at the glitz and glamours of that. But in the day-to-day and in the hard times, and then reflecting out of the hard times and appreciating the good times through the hard times, things get lost in translation, so to speak, and the true testament of what marriage really means to a person is really seen throughout these sort of aspects. And then even more so when children are in the midst of your family of getting married, and that goes without saying. Some people when they get married, they don't want to have children. To each his own. I don't understand it, but okay. But when children are involved and the blessings of children, it also is a testament and to how you feel about your marriage and how you feel about children and how you feel about yourself within that. And I think it's really something in the aspect of all of this merging together, because you start to see the reality of situation, of the importance in life. And I will always stress this, and I've said it briefly in other podcasts, but I will say it again and keep this momentum throughout this theme that for this week about the traditions of marriage, and particularly I'm focusing in on the reasons why for June, why a June bride is part of the mythology and the reasons behind it, the historical reasons behind it. So my life didn't start until I got married, until my husband and I were blessed to have children. And it's something when you're single, you're moving throughout life, you're building your career, you're on your own, you're with your friends, you're paying bills and things of that nature. But it's so rich, I think, when you finally find that some special somebody that you can commit to and share life and get through the ups and downs of life together. And then when children are involved, it's even better. It's just, it knocks you into the realm of reality of what's really important. And it's truly a blessing. And then, I was a person who moved and wanted a family and children, but now that I have it, it's truly wonderful. Mommy! Yeah, hold on, sweetheart. When people get married, June was traditionally the most popular month to marry, and still very common. So why is this? The goddess Juno, for whom June is named, was the protector of women in all aspects of life, but especially in marriage and childbearing, so a wedding in June's month was considered the most auspicious. The idea of June weddings also comes from the Celtic calendar. On the cross-quarter day of Beltane, or May Day, May 1st, young couples would pair off to court for 3 months and then be wed on the next cross-quarter day, the Lammas Day of August 1st. Youths were impatient, so the waiting period was shortened to mid-June, and the popularity of June weddings was ensured. And my husband and I talked about this, and he was saying, which is particularly true, but it depends on if you live on the Gulf Coast in America, and counting the factor of rain primarily. But typically in June, the weather is quite nice. So that's another aspect of good fortune to get married in June. All right, here we go. Of course, June also brings good weather, so it's easier for guests to travel to your wedding, whether it be by horse, drawn buggy, or an airplane. Sunday used to be the popular wedding day. It was the one most people were free from work. It was the one most day where people were free from work. Puritans in the 17th century put a stop to this, believing it was improper to be festive on the Sabbath. In early U.S. history, Wednesday was the luckiest day for weddings. Friday was avoided as it was seen as a hangman's day. Today, Saturdays are the busiest despite the old rhyme. Monday for health, Tuesday for wealth, Wednesday best of all, Thursday for losers, Friday for crosses, and Saturday for no luck at all. So here are some other interpretations about marrying in June. The reasons are many, starting with the most practical of all. If a bride married in June, she was more likely to give birth to her first child in early spring, giving her plenty of time to recover before fall harvest. Many sources say that the tradition of June bride actually began in ancient Rome times. The month of June is named, of course, of the Roman goddess Juno, wife of Jupiter, was not only thought of connections with the femininity, vitality, and considered a protectress of Roman women, but also considered the equivalent of Hera, the Greek goddess of love and marriage. It is also often cited that the popularity of June wedding in Europe tradition is because bathing was less frequent during Middle Ages than in modern times. During this time period, bathing was thought by many to increase the chances of diseases. So nobility tended to only bathe monthly or a few times a year. The peasant class might only bathe once a year, if that often, and that bath usually happened in late spring. So it made sense to marry in June because people would have smelled better for their weddings. Brides also carried bouquets for fragrant herbs and flowers to help everything smell that much sweeter. Another reason for the popularity of June weddings stems from Europe during medieval times. Of course, because Europe was predominantly Christian, a wedding would not have taken place during Lent, which is still true in many modern churches. And the banns have been read all over at least 3 consecutive regular Sunday Masses. This means one had to wait until late spring to marry, after the bans had cleared. The bans was an announcement of the intention to marry and the opportunity for anyone to put forward a reason why the marriage may not lawfully take place. Bans were and still are in some places. Luckily, bathing came into vogue during the 18th century, but the tradition of carrying flowers was carried on. During the regime era, brides often wore flower wreaths on their heads. During the Victorian era, the various use of flowers to communicate specific meanings specified in the flowers was gaining popularity in many parts of Europe, and of course one would want to communicate the correct sentiments for one's wedding. Therefore, it stands to reason that weddings would most commonly take place when the best selection of fresh flowers would be available. And added bonus to talk about these flowers. The availability of fresh flowers continued influencing the season of weddings until fairly modern times, when flowers became available year-round because of the use of airplanes and shipping. With the idea of locally sourcing fresh flowers coming back into fashion, the popularity of a June wedding going away anytime soon isn't going away anytime soon, and excited to see the influx of wedding pictures as in the form of modern day aspects of social media. All right, so here we go to wrap this up with a additional interpretation about June weddings. Okay, and this comes from the tradition of old wives' tales and what is the significance of a June wedding. An old wives' tale says that if you marry in June, you will be blessed with a lifetime of happiness and prosperity. The word honeymoon refers to the first full moon in June after the summer solstice. Couples were expected to enjoy their new wedding bliss towards the end of that month. In addition to this, is quite noted and is quite interesting about the aspects of old wives' tale, particularly the aspect of wearing something blue, these lineages and why that is. And I will expand on that on Wednesday. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. So as I mentioned on Wednesday, I will extend this. And then on Friday, I'm going to start out by focusing in on the food culture of all the listeners out there. I'm going to start doing that on Fridays. And then my first stop is food culture, then music, then literature, and so on and so forth. So just telling you now to let that settle in and get the idea. So on Wednesday, I'm going to expand on this about the myths and legends about weddings. And this particular part will focus in on something borrowed, something blue. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. And on to charted waters out there. Bye-bye now.